One fact checking into today's video, going to have a look at the weather for the next 8 to 10 days in today's video. Proper cold week of it coming up, at least a week of cold weather. There will be snow at times, some heavy snow today up in the north and the west of the country in the form of heavy snow showers. They're pushing further southeast, as there could be some snow turning up across parts of Wales and Midlands, Lincolnshire, East Anglia through the course of this afternoon and this evening. Maybe a little bit getting through into the south overnight tonight. I don't think it'll amount to too much, except over the high ground, such as the Chilterns, but some significant snow in places up in the north and the west. And then beyond that, I say it's staying cold, and this could turn into quite a prolonged cold spell, actually. It's a bit uncertain what happens in the second half of next week. We'll have a look at that in a moment. There's a discrepancy between the models about where this is going in the longer term. But there is the chance that this could turn into really quite a prolonged cold spell, and even if winds go into the east, even the southeast could come into the firing line. Some significant snow later on next week. We'll have a look at the charts in a moment, but before I get on with that, just to say about the ads, there's links to articles on most of the pages at GazWeatherViz.com. Have a browse through the widgets, anything that you're interested in, click through, and just generally play around with the ads, see what they're about, anything that you're interested in. Please click through. So we'll start off with the 500 millibar height anomaly flow charts for the next 7 to 10 days, which takes us up to the 8th of February, so into the up to the end of the first week of the coming month. We've got the ECMWF here on the left. The GFS is over on the right of the screen as you're looking at it. 500 millibars, 8,000 feet is an area in the atmosphere where high pressure and low pressure are being moved around by the jet stream. That essentially is what weather is, the movement of air masses by the jet stream. So with both on the ECM and the GFS, we've got this cold trough digging down into the East United States. Very cold week to 10 day period coming up for them again. And then the flow goes into the Atlantic, quite a strong jet stream across the western part of the Atlantic, but it weakens as it gets towards us because we've got this area of high pressure out to the west. But on the ECMWF, that flow does push into the British Isles, where it splits a bit, with some of it going up to the north and some of it going down around this trough that's sitting to the south of the country. So the ECMWF does eventually, once you get through to the 8 to 10 day period, it does eventually establish into the country a bit of a westerly flow. The GFS, though, is a little bit different. We've got that cold trough in the east of the states. We've got the strong jet stream coming out of the states, and it runs to the north of the country. The position of the high pressure is just a little bit different. The above average height sitting more to the north of the country, and that pushes the jet stream up to the north, some of it of course splitting around this trough down here. But the upshot is that the ECMWF is sort of pushing through an Atlantic flow in the 8 to 10 day period, whereas the ECMWF is, with GFS I should say, is pulling the wings more into the east. So on the ECM we've got this westerly flow coming in, whereas on the GFS the flow goes something like that, and we actually pull a colder easterly wind into the country in the 8 to 10 day period. It's a very, very subtle difference, not much in it, and the ECMWF could very, very easily evolve into that pattern that the GFS is showing. Conversely, the GFS could very easily revert into the pattern that the ECMWF is showing. So for the 8 to 10 day period, that's going to be the critical point, I think, in about a week's time, this time next week, whether we do push the Atlantic through, and this is just a week or so of cold weather, or whether we lock into a much colder easterly pattern. If we do lock into that colder easterly pattern, then we can expect fun and gains. So have a look at the GFS temperature and precipitation ensemble. We can see that the temperatures are trending colder on the GFS model. This red line here is the 30-year temperature average. And we're under average now, of course. We're staying under average through much of the first week of February. This is the 8th of February just here, and even then we're generally trending quite cold. There's a little bit of scatter going through to the second week of February. As I say, this is the 8th just here. This is the start of the second week of the month. Quite a bit of scatter, but overall these ensembles are trending colder for this second week of February. So the GEFS, the ensemble of the GFS model, is, I think, seeing Well, it seemed a chance that this could turn into quite a prolonged spell. Whether it does actually do that, I'm not certain about it, because there are some members of the ensemble, of course, that are going milder, going along the ECWF solution to push those westerly winds through around the 8th, 9th of the month. But overall, these ensembles have trended colder over the last few updates. Precipitation spikes coming through at various intervals as well, indicating that there will be the risk of snow. This ensemble is for London, by the way, so the risk of snow, of course, is more up into the north and the west of the country. London is quite well sheltered from a northerly and northwesterly wind by the Scottish mountains, the Pennines, the Welsh mountains. It takes a lot to penetrate those showers through into London and the southeast from the north and the northwest. You need really a polar low or a convergence line or a trough to sort of bam the showers up and shift them southwards. We know from December 2010, where we had a lot of northerly winds, that you can get significant snow across London and the southeast from a northerly, but you've got to get some sort of mechanism to push those showers through into the southeast. On their own, it doesn't tend to happen, as I say, because there's so many hills and mountains to the north and the west that stops those showers pushing through. But if you can get a trough, if you can get a convergence line or even a little polar low, then even down in the far south-southeast, you can get significant snow in a northerly. But anyway, that's digressing. The overall picture here is that the GFS ensembles are trending colder. So we've got to be watching out for this possibility, no more than that this could turn into quite a prolonged cold spell. Certainly the next week is going to be cold, and this is a temperature anomaly for the coming week, taking us from the 29th of January to the 6th of February, and you see we're firmly below average there. A cold and average week coming up with anomalies around 2 to 4 degrees below average. Most of Central Western Europe also below average with those anomalies. It's in the east and over towards western parts of Russia that the red is being pushed back to with warmer anomalies there, but most of Central Western Europe going colder than average, and we aren't doing too badly compared to other parts of Europe in terms of that anomaly, so no reason to be complaining there, but other places are colder than we are. We're doing okay there compared to most of the parts of Europe. In terms of the anomaly, of course, Germany, Norway, Sweden, those areas will be colder than here because they're in the continent. But in terms of the anomaly, we're not doing too badly. The temperature anomalies in America also cold on average. So this is something that's quite interesting. There is a theory, there's an idea around on the forums, I know, and on some social media, that if it's cold in America, it's the death knell for cold for us. But this just proves that it's not the case. It's going to be colder than average on the eastern side of America in the next week, significantly colder than average, 29th of January to the 6th of February, and Western Europe also colder than average. So it just depends on the pattern. Last year it's very cold in the east of the States, and it was very mild for us. We had a unique pattern last winter that meant the cold air was coming out of the States and blowing up the jet stream, and we was in the firing line for that. The cold air is still coming out of the States and blowing up the jet stream. We saw on the height anomaly chart that is the case, but because the pattern is subtly different, there are differences compared to last year, it means we can still be cold, even though the east of America is cold as well. So just because it's cold in the east of America doesn't mean we can't get it cold here. This week is going to prove that. The precipitation anomaly, quite interesting. It's around average here, the precipitation coming through. Probably a little bit drier than average in some places, but around normal, I think, for most parts of the country in those white colours, with cold and average anomalies, a precipitation anomaly of around normal, around average. That does mean we've got to be watching out for snow coming through at times. So looking at the generic charts, here we are with the GFS. This is for Monday. This area of low pressure is causing us a bit of a headache. It looks like it's going to be slipping to the west of the country from Iceland, but the ECMWF has it further into the country. I'll show you the ECM in a moment. If it does come in, it is going to produce a big snow event. It looks like it's going to slip to the west, though, certainly on the GFS solution. I'm going to watch out as well for a trough to develop to the north that could push some snow southwards through Monday night and into Tuesday. But this main area of low pressure, the big one, looks like it's going to be slipping just out to the west of the country. There it goes into Tuesday. This is midnight Tuesday, the 3rd of January, and the low pressure has gone through the west, down into the Bay of Biscay, and it's down over France. It would only take an adjustment of around 200 or 300 miles, nothing in terms of a global model, to bring that right into the country. So we've got to be watching out for it. I'm going to say behind that, there is a trough here coming southwards. Not sure you can quite make it out. There's a very, very subtle elongation in the isobars just here that's indicating a trough moving southwards. That could produce some snow on Monday night and perhaps into Tuesday as well. The GFS for Wednesday before the February, shows that northerly flow still persisting, so it's going to stay cold at the middle of next week. Risk of snow showers coming southwards, and if that trough comes off, that could band the snow together overnight, Monday into Tuesday, and lasting into Tuesday morning in some parts of the country. Now, beyond that, we build this ridge of high pressure in through the second half of next week. This is the critical point, really, as to whether this just all breaks down after a week, so it's just a week of cold weather, or whether it turns into something much, much more prolonged. It all hinges on this build of pressure coming in over the country. It's over cold air, so it'll be staying cold under that high pressure, but it's whether that can get itself up to the east. So here we are for Friday the 6th of February, and we're building that high pressure through. Notice the ridging going on up in towards Scandinavia. However, the polar vortex is coming back over Greenland, so there's purple colours over there. That will be putting any high pressure under pressure that's trying to form over Scandinavia. The westerly winds will be trying to push into that high pressure, so the whole thing could collapse. That's what the ECMWF is going for. But the GFS does pull it off, so as we go out to day 10, Sunday the 8th of February, the ridging is still there through the country. It's still going up to Scandinavia. This area of low pressure out to the northwest around Greenland and Iceland is being blocked, and eventually we see that the high pressure sort of wins the battle. Here we are on Monday night, just going a little bit beyond day 10, but the high pressure is in over Scandinavia. These troughs are trying to move in off the Atlantic and stalling, probably producing a snow event. And the high pressure sort of wins the battle. The low pressure slips away to the south as we get through to Tuesday the 10th of February, and the winds are generally coming in from an easterly type direction. The high pressure over Scandinavia, at least up to that point, the 10th of February, is winning the war. The ECMWF is a little bit different though. First of all, this area of low pressure for early next week. This comes in across country. Here we are on Monday, the midnight on Monday the 2nd of February. It's just out to the northwest of Scotland. As we run through to midnight Tuesday, you see that low pressure is down somewhere across southwestern England. So it is further into the country with that low pressure than the GFS. That is the potential for a significant snow event where that low pressure goes. Eventually that low pressure slips off in towards the Mediterranean, and we push another sort of elongation down across the country. Not sure you can quite make that out, but there is an elongation there in the isobars through midnight Wednesday the 4th of February. There's a trough or something coming down across the country that will be producing more snow, most likely. And then beyond that, things start to change. The ridge does try to come in on Thursday the 5th of February. It tries to build in off the Atlantic, but it doesn't really pull it off, not like the GFS does. And by day 10, as we saw on the height anomaly chart, we're reverting back to a westerly. However, it's very, very close to doing what the GFS does. We have got a build of pressure over Scandinavia. We've got a nice cold pool as well across northeastern parts of Europe and Central Europe. So it's not far away from it. It'll only take very slight adjustments from this for the high pressure over Scandinavia to win that battle and to keep the cold going and to turn it into a prolonged cold spell. And if you want to see how this could potentially evolve if it goes into a cold pattern, a prolonged cold pattern I should say, here's the GEM from this morning, the Canadian model. Take this with a pinch of salt. The GEM is always different, but this is what could happen. First of all, that low pressure on Monday is a long way away from us, so it doesn't get anywhere near to producing a snow event. But it's really this high pressure building up up around Iceland to the south of Greenland that's interesting. That locks us into a proper cold spell, prolonged cold spell, as we go through next week. 1,030 millibar area of high pressure around Iceland, pulling in these easterly winds all the time. So eventually, as we go through next week, it just gets colder and colder, really. And by the end of next week, we're in a proper easterly there. That would be at least threatening heavy snow for many southern and southeastern parts of the country as the high pressure around Iceland and around Scandinavia sort of combines to produce this very cold, long fetch easterly that's backing all the way into northeastern parts of Europe. It's not quite the beast from the east being unleashed, but it's not far from it, and it's a very cold run, the GEM, with a lot of the heavy snow potential there in the south on those easterly winds. We go through today, 10, and we're still locked into that cold weather from Sunday the 8th of February, high pressure from Iceland to Scandinavia, low pressure to the south, bringing in that easy wind. That's bitterly cold, and there is the threat of quite significant snow there down in the south and the southeast. Now, the GEM is always different to the other two, and it's not as good as the GFS and the ECM. The ECM, GFS are the best, but don't discount it. It's what can happen if these cold patterns lock in. I always talk about getting into a locked in cold pattern. That is sort of the kind of thing I talk about. But when you lock it in, it can just get colder and colder and colder as the winds get into the east. You get an increasing threat of snow in the south and southeast. Easterly winds always better for snow in the south and the southeast because there's no mountains or hills to sort of stop it as you have with the west or northerly or northwesterly. So this could evolve into a prolonged cold spell, but it's yet to be determined whether that's where we're going. Around the end of next week, Thursday, Friday, around a week's time, is going to be the key point, I think, as to whether this can lock into a prolonged cold pattern and shift the winds into the east, or whether it'll just be a typical westerly, a typical sort of week or so of cold weather, and then we revert back to westerly winds. So watch your space on that one. In the meantime, the next week certainly is going to be cold. There will be some wintry weather around at times, particularly at the moment in the north and west. I'll be updating Snow Watch tonight. But that's all for now, and thanks for watching.